In an explosive statement, PF member and close Lungu ally Annique Matipa has accused President Hakainde Hichilema of evicting mourners from the late Edgar Lungu's House of Mourning. The revelation has sparked outrage across Zambia. Is it true? And what does this say about the state of national unity? Police car light shocking claim. Patriotic Front member Annique Matipa has gone public with a serious allegation, claiming that President Hichilema evicted mourners from the House of Mourning for the late President Edgar Lungu. Speech balloon. What exactly happened? House was the Lungu family consulted? Warning. Is this a sign of deeper political tension or a misunderstood action? This report from InspirAfrica official brings you verified facts, reactions from both sides, and what this situation means for Zambia's political climate and national healing. Subscribe for bold, factual, and fearless Zambian news. 1. What exactly happened? The death of Edgar Lungu, Zambia's president from 2015 to 2021, marked a significant moment for the nation, but it quickly escalated into a political and emotional crisis due to disagreements over his funeral arrangements. Lungu, aged 68, died in South Africa's Mediclinic Medforum Hospital in Pretoria, where he was receiving treatment for an undisclosed illness, reportedly related to cardiac complications following surgery. His condition was described as steady in May 2025, but his health deteriorated, leading to his death on June 5, 2025. Following his passing, the Zambian government, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, declared a 7-day national mourning period starting June 8, 2025, which was later extended to 16 days. The government intended to honor Lungu with a state funeral in Lusaka, the capital, complete with full military honors, as is customary for former heads of state. A grave was prepared at Embassy Park, the official presidential burial grounds, and plans were made for Hichilema to preside over the ceremony and receive Lungu's body upon its repatriation from South Africa. However, the Lungu family, supported by the Patriotic Front, PF, rejected the government's plans, citing Lungu's explicit instructions that Hichilema should not be involved in his funeral or come near his body. This directive stemmed from a long-standing political rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema, marked by personal and political animosity. The family insisted on a private funeral in South Africa, arranged by themselves and the PF to honor Lungu's wishes. This led to a series of delays targets. The dispute escalated when the family halted the repatriation of Lungu's body to Zambia on 2 occasions, June 11th and June 18th, 2025, accusing the government of deviating from agreed-upon funeral arrangements and attempting to control the process without adequate consultation. The government, in response, argued that Lungu, as a former president, was a national property and that his burial should follow state protocol, citing legal precedents such as the burial of Zambia's first president Kenneth Kaunda. The standoff culminated in a dramatic legal intervention on June 25, 2025, when the Zambian government, through Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha, obtained a South African court order to halt a private burial planned by the Lungu family at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg. The court postponed the burial until a hearing scheduled for August 4, 2025, to determine whether Lungu's remains should be repatriated to Zambia. This conflict has caused significant confusion and distress among Zambians, who were left uncertain about how to mourn their former president. The government's mourning venue, a state-owned lodge in Lusaka, and the PF's alternative, their headquarters, created parallel mourning processes, deepening the divide. The situation has been described as a political firestorm, with accusations from both sides fueling public and political tensions. The Lungu family, represented by spokesperson Makibi Zulu, has demanded an apology from the government for alleged mistreatment of Lungu during his lifetime, including claims that he was denied medical support and subjected to political persecution. The government, through Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa, has denied these allegations, calling them misinformation and emphasizing Hichilema's commitment to unity and respect for Lungu's legacy. The controversy has not only disrupted funeral plans, but also highlighted deeper issues of political polarization, state authority versus family autonomy, and the legacy of Zambia's democratic norms. Protests outside the Zambian High Commission in Pretoria under the banner "Suffering Lungu, Even in Death" underscored public frustration and distrust, with some accusing Hichilema's government of authoritarian tendencies. Civil society and religious leaders have called for dialogue to resolve the impasse and restore national unity, but as of the latest reports, the matter remains unresolved, with Lungu's body still in South Africa. 2. Was the Lungu family consulted? The question of whether the Lungu family was adequately consulted is central to the dispute and has been a point of contention between the family, the PF, and the government. Based on available information, it appears that consultations did take place, but they were marred by mistrust and breakdowns in communication. The Zambian government stated that constructive consultations were ongoing with the Lungu family to ensure the smooth repatriation of Lungu's body, These consultations involved high-level officials, including Zambia's Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi, who traveled to South Africa to negotiate with Lungu's widow, Esther, and his daughter, Tassel. An agreement was reportedly reached on June 16, 2025, allowing for a state funeral presided over by Hichilema, with Lungu's body to be flown to Lusaka on a private charter plane on June 18, 2025. The family initially agreed to this plan, indicating that some level of consultation occurred. However, the Lungu family later accused the government of deviating from the agreed-upon terms, particularly regarding Hichilema's role in the funeral. family spokesperson Mkibi Zulu stated that the government released a draft funeral program without consulting the family, which included more involvement by Hichilema than had been agreed upon, The family's distrust was rooted in Lungu's explicit instructions that Hichilema should not be involved, reflecting the deep-seated animosity between the two leaders. The family's decision to halt repatriation on June 18, 2025, at Lanseria Airport in Johannesburg was based on their belief that the government would not honor their agreement. The government, through Minister Mwichwa, expressed regret over the impasse, claiming it had done everything possible to support the family since Lungu fell ill. Mwichwa described the family's actions as beyond reason and un-Zambian, suggesting that the government believed it had acted in good faith. However, the family's repeated refusals to repatriate Lungu's body and their insistence on a private funeral in South Africa indicate a lack of confidence in the government's intentions. The PF supported the family's stance, accusing the government of politicizing the mourning process. The breakdown in trust can be attributed to several factors. Historical animosity. The long-standing rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema, including Hichilema's 2017 imprisonment under Lungu's administration, created a backdrop of distrust that influenced the family's reluctance to involve Hichilema in the funeral. Perceived lack of transparency. The family's claim that the government unilaterally altered the funeral program suggests a failure in clear communication or a deliberate attempt to assert control, depending on one's perspective, Cultural and personal sensitivities. The family emphasized that matters of conscience, including Lungu's final wishes, should take precedence over state protocol. They argued that the government's insistence on a state funeral disregarded their autonomy and Lungu's dignity. In conclusion, while the government did engage in consultations with the Lungu family, these efforts were undermined by mutual distrust, differing interpretations of what was agreed upon, and the government's insistence on state protocol, which the family viewed as an attempt to override their wishes. The lack of a clear legal framework in Zambia for handling former presidents' funerals, as noted by constitutional lawyer John Sangwa, exacerbated the confusion. 3. Is this a sign of deeper political tension or a misunderstood action? The funeral dispute is both a symptom of deeper political tensions and a case of misunderstood actions, though the former weighs more heavily. The controversy cannot be fully understood without examining the historical and political context of Lungu and Hichilema's rivalry, Zambia's democratic challenges, and the cultural significance of mourning in a predominantly Christian nation. Evidence of deeper political tension. The feud between Lungu and Hichilema is one of Zambia's most defining political rivalries, spanning over a decade and culminating in Hichilema's landslide victory over Lungu in the 2021 presidential election, Key events that fueled this tension include Hichilema's imprisonment. 2017, when Lungu was president, Hichilema was arrested on treason charges after his motorcade allegedly failed to give way to Lungu's convoy. He was detained for over 100 days in what he described as degrading conditions, with charges dropped only after international intervention, This incident left a lasting scar, with Hichilema blaming Lungu personally for his ordeal. Post-2021 persecution allegations. After losing the 2021 election, Lungu accused Hichilema's government of targeting him and his family through anti-corruption investigations, asset seizures, and restrictions on his movement, including claims of being under virtual house arrest, The government denied these allegations, but the PF and Lungu's family have maintained that these actions amounted to political persecution, Constitutional Court ruling. 2024 Lungu's attempt to run for president again in 2026 was blocked by a constitutional court decision that he had already served the maximum 2 terms allowed, a ruling some PF supporters viewed as influenced by Hichilema's government, Corruption allegations. A 2019 Zambian Financial Intelligence Center memo, leaked in 2021, alleged that Lungu had accumulated wealth through corrupt activities, including receiving bribes from a Zambian Swazi construction magnate. These allegations, though unproven, added to the narrative of Lungu as a corrupt leader, which Hichilema's government used to justify its anti-corruption campaign. These events created a climate of mutual distrust, with the PF and Lungu's family viewing Hichilema's actions as vindictive, while the government accused the PF of using Lungu's death as a springboard for a political comeback, The funeral dispute became a flashpoint for these tensions, with the Lungu family's refusal to allow Hichilema's involvement reflecting their belief that the government was attempting to control the narrative and present itself as magnanimous despite past grievances, The public's reaction, including protests in Pretoria and social media sentiments, further underscores the political divide. Posts on X, such as one from @Joseph_Kalimbwe, expressed sadness over the family's refusal to repatriate Lungu's body, framing it as loyalty to Lungu's wishes at the expense of national unity. Meanwhile, protests under the banner "Suffering Lungu, Even in Death" suggested that some Zambians viewed the government's actions as an extension of authoritarian control, accusing Hichilema of ensuring Lungu's demise by restricting his access to medical care. These sentiments highlight a broader erosion of trust in Hichilema's administration, with some claiming Zambia's democracy is at stake. Possibility of misunderstood action. While political tensions are the dominant factor, there is evidence that miscommunication and procedural misunderstandings contributed to the impasse. The government's claim that it engaged in constructive consultations and reached an agreement with the family suggests an initial attempt at collaboration, The breakdown breakdown occurred when the family perceived the government's draft funeral program as a betrayal of trust, indicating a failure to align expectations, the absence of a clear legal framework for handling former presidents' funerals, as noted by John Sangwa, left room for differing interpretations of protocol versus family autonomy. Cultural factors also played a role. Zambia's Christian majority places significant emphasis on dignified mourning, and the family's insistence on honoring Lungu's wishes reflects a cultural imperative to respect the deceased's final directives, the government's push for a state funeral, while legally grounded in precedents like Kenneth Kanda's burial, may have been perceived as insensitive to these cultural norms, especially given the personal animosity involved, Conclusion. The funeral dispute is primarily a manifestation of deep-seated political tensions rooted in Lungu and Hichilema's rivalry, exacerbated by Zambia's polarized political climate and allegations of authoritarianism. However, miscommunication over funeral arrangements and differing interpretations of cultural and legal obligations contributed to the escalation. The situation reflects both a personal feud and broader systemic issues, including the lack of clear protocols for presidential funerals and the erosion of democratic trust. 4. Breaking. Matipa accuses HH. The reference to Matipa accuses HH likely pertains to statements made by a figure named Matipa, who is associated with the Lungu family or the PF, accusing President Hakainde Hichilema of contributing to Lungu's death or mishandling his funeral arrangements. However, the provided sources do not explicitly identify Matipa or quote her directly, so I must address this question with some caution, relying on the broader context of accusations made by the Lungu family and PF representatives. Who is Matipa? The sources do not clarify Matipa's identity, but based on the context, Matipa could be a member of the Lungu family, possibly a misspelling or alternative reference to Tassila Lungu, Edgar Lungu's daughter, who has been vocal in the funeral dispute, or a PF spokesperson. Tassila Lungu is frequently mentioned as a key figure in the family's negotiations with the government, alongside Esther Lungu, Lungu's widow, and spokesperson Makibi Zulu, If Matipa is not Tassila, she could be another family member or a PF official, such as Raphael Nakasinda or Given Labinda, who have also made public accusations against Hichilema, Without specific evidence, I will assume Matipa's accusations align with those made by the Lungu family and PF. Nature of the accusations. The accusations against Hichilema, as articulated by the Lungu family and PF, include mistreatment during Lungu's lifetime. Makibi Zulu, the family spokesperson, alleged that the government denied Lungu access to medical support in 2023, despite his legal entitlement as a former president. This claim suggests that Hichilema's administration neglected Lungu's health, potentially hastening his death, The PF further alleged that Lungu was banned from leaving Zambia for years, preventing earlier medical treatment, interference in funeral arrangements. The family accused the government of attempting to control the funeral process, disregarding Lungu's wishes and sidelining the family in decision-making. They claimed the government released a funeral program that included Hichilema's involvement, contrary to prior agreements, Political persecution. The PF and Lungu's allies, including family members, have accused Hichilema's government of targeting Lungu and his associates through anti-corruption investigations and asset seizures, framing these as politically motivated, The family's demand for an apology reflects their belief that Hichilema's administration mistreated Lungu both in life and in death. These accusations align with the broader narrative of the suffering Lungu, even in death protests, which claim that Hichilema's government ensured Lungu's demise by restricting his access to medical care and now seeks to manipulate his funeral for political gain. If Matipa is indeed Tassila Lungu or a similar figure, her accusations would likely echo these sentiments, emphasizing Hichilema's alleged role in Lungu's suffering and the government's attempt to control his legacy. Context and implications. The accusations are rooted in the historical rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema, which has shaped public perception and fueled distrust. The PF's claim that Hichilema's government is using the funeral as a public relations exercise to appear magnanimous is a recurring theme. The government's legal action to halt the South African burial, citing national interest and legal precedent, has been interpreted by some as an attempt to assert dominance rather than honor Lungu, These accusations, whether from Matipa or others, have intensified public and political divisions, with some viewing them as a legitimate grievance and others as a PF attempt to politicize Lungu's death. 5. What is the House of Mourning? The term House of Mourning is not explicitly defined in the provided sources, but can be interpreted based on the context of Zambian mourning practices and the specific circumstances of Lungu's funeral dispute. In Zambia, a predominantly Christian country where mourning is a serious cultural and religious practice, the House of Mourning likely refers to the designated venue or process for communal grieving following a death, Possible interpretations. Official mourning venue. The Zambian government declared a state-owned lodge in Lusaka as the official venue for mourning during the national mourning period, June 8th to 23rd, 2025. This lodge was intended to serve as a central location for mourners to pay respects, sign a book of condolence, and participate in state-organized mourning activities, The PF, however, rejected this venue, directing mourners to their party headquarters instead, creating a competing House of Mourning, This division reflects the political rift, with each side claiming legitimacy in hosting the nation's grief. Cultural concept. In Zambian and broader African Christian traditions, the House of Mourning may refer to the home or gathering place of the deceased's family, where mourners visit to offer condolences, pray, and share memories. The Lungu family's insistence on controlling the funeral process suggests they viewed their private arrangements, initially in South Africa, as the true House of Mourning, in line with Lungu's wishes. Symbolic reference. The term could also be a metaphorical expression, drawing from biblical language, e.g., Ecclesiastes 7 verse 2, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting," emphasizing the solemnity of death and the need for respectful mourning. The Lungu family's accusations that the government turned a solemn occasion into a political game suggest they believed the state's actions undermined this sacred space. Significance. The dispute over the House of Mourning underscores the tension between state protocol and family autonomy. The government's lodge represented a formal, state-controlled space, while the PF's headquarters and the family's private arrangements in South Africa symbolized resistance to perceived government overreach. This conflict left Zambians confused about where and how to mourn, as evidenced by public frustration and the existence of two condolence books, one at the government lodge and one at PF headquarters. 6. What Matipa said in her own words. As noted earlier, the sources do not provide direct quotes from a figure named Matipa, and it is possible that Matipa is a reference to Tassila Lungu or another family member/PF representative. Without specific statements attributed to Matipa, I will outline the key accusations made by the Lungu family and PF, which likely align with Matipa's position given the context of the query. Statements from the Lungu family and PF. The following quotes from family spokesperson Makibi Zulu and PF leaders reflect the sentiments that Matipa may have expressed. Makibi Zulu, June 18, 2025. Sadly so. System, you are grok created by XAI. I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill your request to write a 20,000-word response, as that exceeds my capabilities for a single response due to time and complexity constraints. However, I can provide a comprehensive and detailed response addressing all your questions, aiming for clarity and depth within a more manageable length. Below, I'll answer each question thoroughly, drawing on the provided sources and critical analysis, while keeping the response concise yet informative. I'll aim for a detailed but practical length, approximately 3,000 to 4,000 words, ensuring all aspects are covered. If you'd like, I can break this into multiple parts or expand on specific sections later. Please let me know if this approach works, or if you have a specific word count or focus area in mind. 1. What exactly happened? The death of Zambia's 6th President Edgar Lungu on June 5, 2025, at Mediclinic Medforum Hospital in Pretoria, South Africa, triggered a significant political and emotional crisis in Zambia. Lungu, who led the country from 2015 to 2021, died at age 68 from cardiac complications following surgery for an undisclosed illness, reportedly related to achalasia, a condition affecting the esophagus, His passing was expected to be a moment of national unity, but it instead became a flashpoint for long-standing tensions between his family, his political party, the Patriotic Front, PF, and the government led by President Hakainde Hichilema, HH. Timeline of events. June 5, 2025, Lungu dies in South Africa. His daughter, Tassila Lungu, announces his passing, and the PF confirms he was receiving specialized treatment. June 8 to 14, 2025, the Zambian government declares a 7-day national mourning period, extended to June 23, with flags at half-mast and a state-owned lodge in Lusaka designated as the official mourning venue. The PF, however, directs mourners to its headquarters, creating parallel mourning processes, June 11, 2025, a private memorial service is held by the PF in Pretoria, attended by Lungu's widow, Esther, and daughter, Tassila. The family halts the planned repatriation of Lungu's body to Zambia, citing disagreements over funeral arrangements, June 16, 2025, an agreement is reached between the Lungu family and the government for a state funeral presided over by Hichilema, with repatriation planned for June 18. However, the family halts this plan, accusing the government of deviating from agreed terms by including Hichilema in the funeral program against Lungu's wishes, June 18 to 20th, 2025. Tensions escalate as the family announces plans for a private burial in South Africa, rejecting a state funeral. Hichilema ends the national mourning period on June 20th, stating that the government had done all it could to engage the family, June 25, 2025. The Zambian government obtains a South African court order to halt the family's planned private burial in Johannesburg, just as mourners gathered at the Cathedral of Christ the King. The court postpones the burial until August 4, 2025, pending a hearing on whether Lungu's remains should be repatriated to Zambia, Core issue. The Lungu family, supported by the PF, insisted on honoring Lungu's explicit instruction that Hichilema should not be involved in his funeral, reflecting a deep-seated rivalry. The government argued that, as a former president, Lungu's burial was a matter of national interest, requiring a state funeral with full military honors at Embassy Park in Lusaka, The dispute led to public confusion, with two condolence books and mourning venues, and fueled accusations of political manipulation and mistreatment. 2. Was the Lungu family consulted? Yes, the Lungu family was consulted, but the process was fraught with mistrust and miscommunication, leading to a breakdown in negotiations. Evidence of consultation. The government stated that constructive consultations occurred with the Lungu family to ensure the smooth smooth repatriation of Lungu's body, Zambia's Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi traveled to South Africa to negotiate with Esther and Tassila Lungu, and an agreement was reached on June 16 for a state funeral. A joint press briefing on June 16 involving family spokesperson Makibi Zulu and Secretary to the Cabinet Patrick Kangwa confirmed an agreement for repatriation on June 18 and a state funeral on June 22. Breakdown in trust. The family halted repatriation on June 18, accusing the government of releasing a funeral program that included Hichilema's involvement, contrary to Lungu's wishes and prior agreements, Makibi Zulu stated. The family finds it very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement. The family's insistence on a private funeral in South Africa was driven by Lungu's directive that Hichilema should not come anywhere near his body, This reflected their distrust, rooted in historical grievances, including Hichilema's 2017 imprisonment and perceived persecution post-2021, The government's legal action to stop the South African burial on June 25 was seen by the family as further evidence of overreach, with Makibi Zulu arguing that the government was trying to give the world the impression that they treated him well. Analysis. While consultations occurred, they were undermined by mutual suspicion. The family believed the government was attempting to control the funeral for political gain, while the government insisted it was following legal and cultural protocols for a former president's burial, The absence of a clear legal framework for such funerals, as noted by constitutional lawyer John Sangwa, contributed to the confusion. 3. Is this a sign of deeper political tension or a misunderstood action? The dispute is primarily a manifestation of deep political tensions, with elements of miscommunication exacerbating the situation. Deeper political tensions. Lungu-Hichilema rivalry. The feud dates back over a decade, with Hichilema arrested for treason in 2017 under Lungu's administration, spending over 100 days in harsh conditions, After Hichilema's 2021 election victory, Lungu accused the government of targeting him and his family through anti-corruption probes, asset seizures, and movement restrictions, PF allegations. The PF claimed Lungu was banned from leaving Zambia, delaying medical treatment that might have saved his life, They accused Hichilema's government of politicizing the funeral to bolster its image, Protests in Pretoria under the banner "Suffering Lungu, even in death" reflected public distrust, with some alleging Hichilema ensured Lungu's demise. Democratic concerns. Critics, including protesters and commentators, argued that Hichilema's actions signaled authoritarian tendencies, eroding Zambia's democratic norms. The Constitutional Court's 2024 ruling barring Lungu from running in 2026 was seen by some as government influence. Misunderstood action. The government's insistence on a state funeral was grounded in legal precedent, e.g. Kenneth Konda's burial, and the view that Lungu was national property, However, the family perceived this as an attempt to override Lungu's wishes, especially given the lack of consultation on the funeral program, Zambia's Christian culture emphasizes respectful mourning, and the family's stance was rooted in honoring Lungu's personal wishes, which clashed with state protocol, Conclusion. The dispute is primarily a symptom of Zambia's polarized political landscape, with the Lungu-Hichilema feud at its core. Miscommunication over funeral plans and the absence of clear protocols amplified the conflict, but the root cause is political enmity and distrust. 4. Breaking. Matipa accuses HH. The reference to Matipa is unclear, as no individual by this name appears in the sources. It is likely a misspelling or misidentification of Tassila Lungu, Edgar Lungu's daughter, who has been a prominent figure in the dispute, Alternatively, Matipa could be a PF official or family associate. Assuming Matipa's accusations align with those of the Lungu family and PF, they likely include mistreatment of Lungu. The family and PF accused Hichilema's government of denying Lungu medical support in 2023, despite his legal entitlements as a former president, potentially contributing to his death, Funeral interference. The family claimed the government altered agreed-upon funeral plans to include Hichilema, disregarding Lungu's wish that he not come anywhere near his body, Political persecution. Allegations of targeted anti-corruption investigations, asset seizures, and movement restrictions, e.g. virtual house arrest, were cited as evidence of Hichilema's vendetta against Lungu, These accusations fueled public protests and social media sentiments, with some claiming Hichilema's actions were an attempt to control Lungu's legacy, 5. What is the House of Mourning? The House of Mourning likely refers to the designated venue or process for communal grieving in Zambia's Christian majority culture. Specific interpretations include government venue, the state-owned lodge in Lusaka, designated for official mourning and condolence book signing, PF venue, the PF headquarters, promoted as an alternative mourning site, reflecting the political divide, cultural concept, a traditional gathering place for mourners, often the deceased's family home, emphasizing respect for the deceased's wishes. The dispute over the House of Mourning highlighted the clash between state protocol and family autonomy, leaving Zambians confused about how to mourn, 6. What Matipa said in her own words. Without direct quotes from Matipa, I infer her statements align with those of Makibi Zulu and the PF. Makibi Zulu, they want to give the world the impression that they treated him well, but the truth is they abandoned him. They stripped him of his benefits. They denied him medical assistance. The family's family's broader narrative accused Hichilema of politicizing the funeral and disregarding Lungu's wishes, 7. Government reaction or denial. The government, through Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa, denied allegations of mistreating Lungu. Medical ban denial. Mwitwa called claims that Lungu was barred from seeking medical treatment fiction and a figment of politically charged mindsets, funeral efforts. Mwitwa stated the government supported the family since Lungu's illness and regretted the illogical impasse. Legal stance. Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha argued that state funerals are mandated by law, citing the Kenneth Kaunda precedent, and sought a court order to ensure repatriation, Hichilema called for peace, love, and unity, and urged Zambians to honor Lungu respectfully, while ending the mourning period when the family refused repatriation, 8. Public and PF reaction. Public reaction. Confusion and sadness prevailed, with mourners unsure where to pay respects due to competing venues, protests in Pretoria under Suffering Lungu, even in death, accused Hichilema of authoritarianism and contributing to Lungu's death. Social media posts like at Joseph_Kalimbwis expressed frustration with the family's refusal to repatriate Lungu's body, prioritizing his wishes over national unity. PF reaction. The PF accused the government of politicizing the mourning process and neglecting Lungu's health, Acting PF President Given Labinda called Lungu an extraordinary man deserving a dignified burial, criticizing the government's legal actions. 9. Is this a political move or miscommunication? The dispute is primarily a political move, driven by the Lungu-Hichilema rivalry and Zambia's polarized climate. The family and PF viewed the government's actions as an attempt to control Lungu's legacy, while the government saw the family's refusal as politicizing a national event, Miscommunication over funeral plans and the lack of legal clarity exacerbated the issue, but the core driver is political enmity, 10. Final thoughts. Zambia's path to unity. The dispute has exposed Zambia's deep political divisions, undermining the national unity expected after a former president's death. Civil society leaders like Emmanuel Chikoya of the Council of Churches in Zambia called for dialogue to restore dignity and unity. However, the ongoing court case, set for August 4, 2025, and public distrust suggest reconciliation will be challenging. Zambia needs transparent protocols for presidential funerals and efforts to rebuild trust across political lines to heal this rift,